Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Boro Fan TV and the Monday Night Show with me, James Hutchinson. Joining me once again this week is Joe Scott. How are you doing, Joe?
Not too bad, James. Seen better days, to be honest.
Well, hopefully this will cheer up the show tonight, and we'll have a chat about the Boro, the game we're reading on Saturday, and we're also going to look ahead to the matches with Bristol City tomorrow and Cardiff at the weekend. Two tough away days for Boro ahead, but hopefully some more points on the board. We're also going to look at transfer window 2, which didn't end up too good for the Boro, but there's still hope. Boro's dealings or lack of. How do you feel about that, Boro fans? And in the bigger picture, project big picture, supportive or self-interest? You let us know on your programme tonight on Boro Fan TV and the Monday Night Show. So, Joe, we'll start off with the transfer window. How disappointed, and the second part of the question, how surprised were you that we didn't add to the 5 players that we'd purchased since the end of last season?
I think it's a puzzle that I just really, I don't have an answer for at this minute. I mean, all through the morning of the deadline day, all the talk about Yannick Bolasie. I mean, we could have had him, when we had the first full season under Pulis, but he ended up going to Villa and didn't make much of a name for himself there. But, the chance game again, this time it could have been a little bit easier because he was on his last year of his contract at Everton. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure if something come up in terms of the deal not going through. Something to do with possibly, Bowser again, probably. But, at the end of the day, it's going to be a case of what ifs, to be honest, because there was talk about Baba Rahman coming in from Chelsea as well, but they didn't make the deal in time. So I just said to myself, the free agent market is still open, so Warnock will have to look into that, unfortunately. Yeah. But deadline day was obviously very frustrating. One for us, I'd say. Yeah.
I mean, you've touched on it there about Bolasie. I mean, it's the second time in 2 years that we've missed out on him on transfer deadline day. Did it frustrate you, the fact that it came across in the immediate aftermath that the deal had been agreed, it had all been signed and stuff, and we ran out of time? But now there's been one or two little things afterwards that have come out and said, well, actually the agent and the player were maybe shifting the goalposts a little bit and coming up with things which the club didn't know anything about previously. Did it frustrate you that we missed out on Bolasie? Would you have been happy to have him here, or do you think, maybe we've dodged a bullet?
It depends where we go, because obviously he's worked under Warnock before, right, when he was at Crystal Palace. Maybe it was the sort of thing we need, obviously, to looking in the wing positions. Obviously, I was thinking one side you'll have Roberts, and the other side you probably have Bolasie. But, whether it comes to terms of money or the recruitment team being absolutely shambles again, it actually works, could work in both ways, to be honest. There's one side of us, obviously, because we didn't actually loan out Marcus Brown during this window at all. I mean, he could have a possible run in later on in the season, but I mean, it's obviously a complete shame that we didn't add someone else into the squad like Bolasie, who has tremendous experience. Hopefully, try to get us out this level.
Yeah, and like you've said there, we've got the opportunity to still bring in free agents. Would you like to see the club do that? And if so, what sort of positions? Or is it just going to be the case of one position we might be able to fill?
Well, Warnock definitely said, he wants a striker. And obviously, he said he's identified 2 possible targets in the free agent window. I think you and I touched on it before the show. There's obviously Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, who Warnock knows from his time at Cardiff, as well as Gary Medine as well, I think you mentioned as well. Yeah. Those 2 obviously can provide experience, because if Gary Medine were to come, he'll probably end up mainly being backup for obviously Tuber and Britt, whilst Fletcher's still out at the moment. But the Nathaniel Mendez-Lang could want to possibly challenge Tavernier for one of the wing spots, with obviously Robert occupying the other one. So if those 2 can come in, I'd say that'll fair do. We can do with them obviously before the January deadline. So yeah, or January window, I should say. So I certainly won't mind if them 2 possibly came from the club.
Okay, mate. And the other big talking point, aside from things with the Boro, was the project big picture last week Joe. Do you think it was an opportunistic power grab by the Big Six in the Premier League, or do you think there was a genuine bailout on the table for the lower league clubs?
It depends, because I think it was Liverpool and Manchester United who came up with it originally, as potentially, possible money going into the pot for possibly the lower league clubs, obviously. But I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think having 18 teams in the Premier League would obviously be the better outcome, I think, because I'm more used to having 20 clubs in the Premier League and obviously continue on with the formation and so on with the other leagues. But ideally, I would have preferred, obviously, with this projected now, you can have like 20 or 30 million pounds spread out between the clubs, either in our league or League One and League Two in particular. I think that would have been the better solution, but obviously, it all went, skew-ish, sort of say.
Yeah. I think the clubs in the Football League have said there's a shortfall of around about £250 million, which they need to get them through the next few months, just to make sure that all 72 clubs still exist. And they said the 50 million, actually, I think 20 million was what the clubs were going to get. 30 million was a loan, which they had to pay back. And to me, It just seems as though they were taking advantage of the situation that clubs are desperate for money and they're offering them something which is better than nothing in a way. But again, it's got all sorts of terms and things attached to it, which it isn't very helpful for clubs in the Football League. And then to make them pay that money back when you're seeing clubs in the Premier League last week spending £16 million on players. It seems obscene to me that they can spend that on one player, yet they're not willing to give a bailout to 72 clubs that need money to get through the next few months.
Yeah, especially if like the clubs in the Premier League have like clubs that have links with the system, say like Swansea, they've had links with Newport over the last couple of years, and all them. And I think Man City have got a couple of different clubs from around the world as well. But I don't know, I think Man U could have their little bit of links with Salford City as well. But it depends, spending all that money on one player, and then you could just have a little bit of funds going in towards the clubs that are in the lower reaches. So
yeah,
it depends where you want to put the money, basically.
Yeah, I think it's something that's going to run, Joe, to be honest. A few people just been getting in touch about players there that could potentially come in as free agents. Graham McWilliams, thanks for watching the show, mate. Graham said Fabio Barini, the ex-Sunderland centre-forward, could be one. There's one or two people that aren't too thrilled with the prospect of maybe Mendes Lang coming. Francis, thanks for watching the show again, pal. Hope you're well. We're going to go on to the Reading game now. Joe,
yeah.
One or two people here are saying that they didn't enjoy the game, or they had problems staying awake while it was on. Saul Starling, thanks for watching, pal. I nearly fell asleep first half during the Reading game. I think, in one sense, you could say that it wasn't the most exciting of matches, but again, it also illustrated how close the Championship is when you think Reading had won 4 games in a row, and there was very little to choose between the two teams on Saturday. Would you agree?
Well, it was really. It was like an even game, so to speak. We had little chances, and they had a fair few. Particularly, Ovi Ajaria was their main threat throughout the game, who had 2 screamers in the game, and obviously, I think there was only one of them that really Bettinelli could obviously get to, and then obviously we had very few chances here and there, apart from the one which was disallowed when Howson put it in. So, in lucky ways, under the difficult circumstances, obviously playing against a team who at the time had a 100% record, I would have been happy to take a point out of Reading more than anything.
Mm-hmm. It was a wholehearted, committed performance. I don't think you can ever doubt that that's what you're going to get with the Neil Warnock team, Joe. And there was few chances at either end. Some people said that maybe we should have introduced Patrick Roberts at some stage in the second half. Do you agree with that, or do you think Neil Warnock just wanted to keep things tight because he was worried that things might slip if he brought Roberts on?
To be fair, at the start of the second half, obviously, when Warnock took Brett Sombalonga off, you would have put it for certain that Patrick Roberts would have come on at that point. But instead, he brought on Marvin Johnson, which I thought was a bit odd, considering the position. But at the end of the day, I think it's smart management, I would say, from Warnock to do that. But I would rather have Roberts on probably then rather than Johnson. But I mean, it was a good. I'm going back to Warnock, saying that about British Sombalonga after the game where he got took off, and obviously there was some Boro fans that were concerned that he actually picked up an injury, but he did say he took him off as a precaution just in case if more damage was done. And I'd say that's good management, good terms of management there. So
yeah,
going back to Roberts, like I say, I would have introduced him on when Britt got took off instead of Marvin Johnson, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, Josh Arnold, he thinks that Roberts should start tomorrow night, and I think there's a fair chance that Roberts will start in one of the two games. I think probably, though, Joe, away games will suit him more because there'll be a little bit more space for him to exploit when we're away from home and teams are pushing on to us rather than we're expected to maybe take the initiative in home games. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we're probably getting our best more out of our team away from home than we are at home, and we found that out obviously in the last bit of last season. And I think, and especially Patrick Roberts was more better suited in the away games than probably most of the other players that we have in the club. Particularly when we went, obviously when we were at Reading last season. So it could benefit from Roberts' perspective, but obviously another team we're going to be playing against on Tuesday night who previously had another 100% record, which obviously they didn't have over the weekend, which we'll touch on in a sec. So
yeah,
it could work. It could work in both ways, I think, for Roberts.
It could. Talking of other players that were involved on the pitch at the weekend, the renaissance of Anthony Dyke-Steele and Mark Bowler continues. How pleased are you for those two lads?
Yeah, very pleased for them. I think Dyke-Steele has come on wonders this season ever since he's been playing at centre back. And obviously with Bowler, it's good to see him get a good run in. Obviously, we didn't get much of the best out of him last season. We ended up loaning him back to Blackpool, and since then he came back. I think Warnock has give his players obviously like a fresh start, so to speak, and Bowler actually took advantage of that. So it's good to see those two players obviously getting a good run in the team, and especially Dyke-Steele as well fitting into that centre back position well.
Yeah, and Dale Fry again, another good performance from Dale.
Yeah, another good performance from Dale. He needed to be in for these next few weeks anyway, obviously, because with Grant Hall still out for another few weeks or so, it's crucial that both him and Dyke-Steele and possibly McNair as well fitting well into that free at the back line whilst these tough couple of games we've got coming up.
Yeah. Chris Andrews has been in touch. Hey, Chris. Why did they get rid of Walker on loan? It doesn't make sense. Surely he knew the extent of Fletcher's injury. And he's also mentioned then again Patrick Roberts. And also what probably has made things more difficult now is, as you mentioned earlier, Joe, the British Sombalonga situation. He went off at half-time at the weekend. There was no forward on the bench. And in fairness, I thought Chuba Akpom did really well. He's come in and really impressed me, not only with his goals, but his work rate. And he really worked the channels in the second half and still give the Reading defence something to think about. But as Chris has mentioned there, it does seem funny that we've allowed a forward to go out when we only had two forwards to begin with. And now we potentially might have lost one of those as well.
Well, like I said earlier, I think the Sombalonga's the case. I think it was just a case of Warnock taking him off before there was more damage being done. I think with Walker, I think, he is, from what I've seen in pre-season, he is showing signs that he can actually get up there for the Boro. But I think loaning him back out to MK Dons, I think he just needs a little bit to have more first team experience, to be honest. So, and to go into that level in League One like MK Dons will probably suit him well, to be honest. But I think, we touched on this earlier. In this transfer window, we did manage just to keep hold of Marcus Brown as well, because there was talk about him going out on loan, but Marcus Brown decided to stay here. So, I mean, it could actually be a good thing that we actually brought in Roberts and kept Marcus Brown in that team as well. So, and we could rely on either of them just in case if either Akpom or Sombalonga fall victim to injury.
Okay, pal. Well, Johnny Howson came closest to breaking the deadlock at the weekend, Joe. And it was a borderline offside decision. And then he also had one cleared off the line not long after that. Fine margins, isn't it? We could have been talking about a 1-0 win there against Reading, who were at the top of the table, and we'd be sitting now on 8 points, and things would be looking really rosy. But as it was, it's a 4th game in a row, undefeated. What was your take on picking up a point in that match?
I mean, to be fair, I would have been happy with a point anyway.
Right.
I would rather settle for a point rather than defeats against teams that are currently they're on form at the moment. And Reading were one of them. Obviously, we've seen them, under a new manager who guided Atlanta United to an MLS title, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah.
So it was good to get a point out of it, but obviously we go on to the game on Tuesday night, which is, like I said, we'll touch on the next game in a sec.
Yeah.
So obviously we've got Cardiff the following Saturday. So out of those games, I think the one we've got coming up on the following Saturday against Cardiff, in my eyes, I think I can see as winnable.
Right. Oh, well, we'll have a look at that in a minute, Joe. As I mentioned there, 5 games in, got a win, 3 draws, 1 defeat, scored 4, conceded 4, but every single game has been a close game. The 1 defeat was a 1-0 loss at Watford. The win was a 2-1 win against Barnsley. Is that an indication of the nature of the championship, and especially Boro's part in it this year, that it's going to be close? There's going to be games which you might win very fortunately, or close games that just go your way, some games that just go against you. But does that show how competitive a side we're going to be in the championship this year?
Yeah, I think obviously with Warnock at the helm as well, I think most fans will probably expect us to be challenging for their playoff positions. But I think, in my eyes, with the whole system that this league is being, obviously, like you said, it's going to be tough, and especially in these times as well. I think more teams are more determined than ever to go and challenge for those playoff positions. And I think, in my eyes, obviously, if we get to the playoffs or even get promoted, it's obviously going to be brilliant. But even a top table finish, I think, for this season probably will be the best option for Boro, even though we currently sit in mid-table at the moment. But a top half, or either somewhere near the playoffs or getting towards those top positions, I would probably be happy with for this season.
Right. Well, we'll have a chat about that as well, Joe. A few people getting in touch with us on the show tonight. Chris Sykes, hope you're well, Chris. How good has Fry been? I was not a big fan, but he's proven me wrong. I think the thing with Dale was when he first came on the scene, he was superb, and maybe expectations rose really high with Dale. And it's not that long ago since a lot of Premiership clubs were linked with him, particularly Burnley, for big money moves away to the Premier League. And he obviously had a difficult season last year. He's had a few loan moves which didn't work out for him. But he's come back this summer and the start of the season, and he has got back to his best, hasn't he, Joe?
Yeah, for the past 2 seasons, I think Dale Fry's have really come up trumps. We saw glimpses of it this season, obviously, with the clearance at QPR the other week. So it really has proved a point, for the last couple of years, in my eyes. I think that's Dale Fry. So, I mean, it could be very crucial for us, in the long run. Obviously, like you said, Burnley were after him at one point, which obviously we don't want to see him fall victim to the Burnley curse, so to speak, as what Ben Gibson had, for example.
Yeah.
So I think from now to the end of the season, I think having Fry at the club, I think it's going to be crucial for us in the forward run, so to speak.
Yeah, he needs to keep well away from Sean Dyche, doesn't he? Keep well away from that fella. Dean Chetwood, thanks for watching, Dino. Very promising start of the season against tough teams, and that's a good point that Dean's made. When you look on paper, the start of the season, we've had some difficult fixtures. We've had Watford and Bournemouth. They've just come down to the Premier League. We played Reading, who were at top of the table. Yeah. And the week ahead, in a second, we're going to look at the Bristol City and Cardiff games. We have had a tough start to this season, haven't we, Joe?
Yeah, considering, the difference, like I said on some of the previous shows, the start that we had for the start of the season is that obviously last season we started off against a team that had just come up from League One. And now this season we started off against 2 teams that were recently relegated from the Premier League. And you couldn't have asked for a more tougher start, I think, to this season rather than we had last. Obviously, Watford was just our only blip so far this season in the league. But I think from then on, I think we did actually well in some games. There was a lot of positives to take out of it. I think the win against Barnsley, I think, was crucial in terms of us trying to progress further up the league, and then we are going down the bottom with all these draws. But it's been a tough start, no doubt, but I think we can progress more from there. Obviously, next few round of fixtures coming up are going to be difficult, but I think, if we can perform well the way we have been these last few games, obviously from the Watford defeat, I think a lot of positives will come in terms of the club, obviously, for the next few weeks onwards.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, Joe. I'm quite optimistic. I mean, at the start of the season, I would have been more than happy to finish in the top half of the table, and that would have been more than enough for me. If we'd have finished about 12th, I'd be happy with that. But I genuinely think now, Joe, that with a couple of additions to the squad, I think we've got an outside chance of making the playoffs, because I just think the nature of the Championship this season is it's not a great league. And I just think we've got a really good manager, probably one of the best in the division. And I think he's canny enough to get the most out of the squad we've got. And I just think one or two more additions just to beef the squad up a bit, because you do get injury suspensions. You know what it's like in the Championship. And this year, more than ever, with all the games coming thick and fast, I genuinely think there's an opportunity that we could sneak into the top 6 this year. I don't want to pile pressure onto the team and get carried away with expectations. Yeah. I genuinely think there's a chance we could do that this year. So just watch this space. I mean, David Towers, again, great point here, David. We are very thin in a number of areas, and hopefully we can hold out till January, but we do need players desperately. And that's a good point. I think the squad is not thick enough at the moment to get us through till January. And I think we do need a couple more players. But I'm genuinely optimistic that we could have a good season, and maybe even a season better than what most people expect. So we'll see how we go. But Bristol City next, Joe. We've had Reading. Next up is Bristol City, the other joint leaders tomorrow night at Ashton Gate. The Robins have made a fantastic start to the season under Dean Holden. It's going to be a tough game, isn't it?
It's going to be tough. Obviously, we found out the hard way the last time we played them, obviously, at the Riverside, because I think before then, they recently sacked Lee Johnson, I think, and then Dean Holden, who was his number 2 at the time, obviously stepped into the frame, and then they looked a completely different team from when they were under Johnson. To be truthful, they were more attacking, they're more good with possession with the ball, and considering the quality of their players they have at the club as well, the likes of Jeju, Wells, Patterson, they're going to be all going to be causing a big threat for us tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's a good point you made there. I've like Jamie Patterson, I rate him very highly in midfield. And up front this year, they've had the goals of Naki Wells, Chris Martin, that used to be at Derby. He's there up front. You've mentioned Jeju, Andreas Weimann. They've got all sorts of players there at Bristol City. They took 4 points off the Boro last season. We drew at Ashton Gate 2-2. And then they really give us a bit of a drubbing at the Riverside towards the end of last season. So what's your prediction for tomorrow night, Joe?
I think, like I said, with Reading, with the 2 current teams that are currently in the top positions at the moment, I'd very happily, taking a point out of those both, because after that, I think we've got Cardiff coming up on the following Saturday, and I think that one will be winnable. So, and plus, going back to the players that Bristol City have, I think you got a goalkeeper like Daniel Bentley. I think he's one of the most underrated goalkeepers, I think, in this division. So it's going to be tough to get anything probably past him, to be truthful. And plus, in fact, you've also in defence, you've got another former Boro player in Thomas Callas in there as well. But him in the defensive line, I think they're going to be tough to handle. So for this one, I'm probably going to go with probably going to be the same result as the last time we went to Ashton Gate. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw, to be honest.
High-scoring game, mate. High-scoring game. I'll be honest, I'd be delighted with a draw tomorrow night. I think before these 3 games, which were tough games, Reading and the 2 aways we've got coming up, I'd have been happy with 5 points from those games. Obviously, we've taken 1 from the first 2. Big ask to get 4 from 2 away games, but I think if anyone can, I think Neil Warnock can, in terms of the players we've got, and he might be able to get us the points. But I think, I think Saturday Cardiff might be the easier game, and that's not taking anything away from Cardiff, because, again, they're a very difficult side to play against. But Andrew, let us know your thoughts on what you think the score will be in the next 2 games. Chris Andrews has done that. He thinks it'll be a 0-0 draw tomorrow, which it may not be the greatest game to watch, but I think most Boro fans will be happy to pick up a point tomorrow night.
Definitely have to be more entertaining than a 0-0 draw, I'd probably say.
But yeah, a point wouldn't be a bad result at all. And as we've said, we go down to Cardiff at the weekend. Neil Warnock's old stomping ground, but there's many of them. It won't be a game for the faint-hearted, though, will it, Joe?
No, definitely against a side like Cardiff. I think they're obviously they were unlucky not to get into the playoff final last season. I think considering they've got a good group of players, obviously, which Warnock knows very well, and with Neil Harris adding a couple of bits into there as well. And you've got to keep an eye out for Kiefer Moore in particular, mate. Especially Kiefer Moore and Junior Hoylett as well.
Yeah, like you say, they've had one or two iffy results since the start of the season at home, mainly. They've lost at home to Sheffield Wednesday. But they've been doing well on the road. They won at Forest. They won at Preston yesterday. And they're a side that are very hard to play against. And again, it's a game which I can't see being filled with goals. And I think it'll be a difficult match. But if anybody knows him, it's Neil Warnock, and he'll have us set up there to be difficult for them to play against. Do you think Patrick Roberts, we mentioned him earlier on, do you think he'll feature in both or one of these games? What do you reckon, Joe?
It probably definitely have some impact in all of them, I think, especially, probably Cardiff, because obviously us at Cardiff down the years, obviously it's not been great, going to the Cardiff City Stadium and not picking up the results that we usually want down there, because to be fair, the Cardiff City Stadium isn't quite an intimidating place to go to, obviously considering the Welsh national team also play there as well. But it is winnable, like you said. So I think Patrick Roberts could definitely have some impact going into both of them games, I think, coming up.
Yeah. He's an interesting one. From Kev Short, a regular on the show. Hi, Kev. Hope you're well, mate. Speaking of Hoylett, I know his uncle. He said earlier this summer he was sounded out and would definitely have been up for joining the Boro, but it never got further than that. And he's a player that would interest a lot of clubs, I think, in the Championship, and certainly do a good job. And as you say, he's going to be one we'll have to watch at the weekend.
It's one of the players we've been linked with in the summer as well. I think he's on his last year of his contract at Cardiff as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we probably might go back in for him in January if Warnock has the chance.
Maybe. So what do you reckon the score's going to be at Cardiff? You said you were a little bit more optimistic about possibly getting 3 points there. What do you reckon, Joe?
Cardiff, I'm going to say probably get a 2-0 win out of that.
Right. I'll tell you what, if we take 4 points, that'll be a great week. David Towers is thinking along the similar sort of lines, but he said, overall, I'm happy with team performances and managers so far this season. 3 points from these games would be good, but 2 draws would also be acceptable. And it's like you say, Joe, in the Championship and the nature of the league, sometimes even going unbeaten but having a lot of draws does tend to see you slip down the table a bit. But as Dean Chetwood said earlier on the show, we've had a tough start of the season, and a draw in these 2 games under any circumstances are good results, aren't they?
Yeah, considering the teams that both Bristol City and Cardiff are, I think I would rather take 4 points from those games. I think obviously I'll take a draw at Bristol City, and then obviously we'll try and hopefully our best to get a win at Cardiff. So I'll be happy with 4 points from those 2 games that we've got coming up anyways, because I think after that, I think along the line after that, I think we've got Coventry at home, I think, after Cardiff. So we need to start from the point where we have to get to Cardiff. I think the next few games we've got coming up after that, I think, are winnable.
Good point, Joe. Just before we go, great point here from Ian Jones. I don't know if you agree with this. Ian's saying they're going back to Dale Fry. We'll have to have really good performances in these next 2 games for us to get anything out of them. He said, could it be the fans not on his back that's helped Dale? Homegrown players always get stick. Do you think that's a fair point, that there's been no fans in the stadium and maybe Dale's relaxed a little bit more this season?
Could be. Obviously, it's a disappointment that we're not there still in a minute. But obviously, we've been trying to keep ourselves busy with going to non-league games. But with Dale, I think, the he is sort of relaxed a bit, you know. Obviously, you know, he has like makeshift partners in there with McNair and Dykesdale sometimes. So I think he's definitely more settled, but with no fans in at the moment. So he's doing well so far this season.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, thanks for that, Joe. Everyone, we've come to the end of tonight's show. Many thanks, Joe, for joining us.
No problem, mate.
And to everyone out there that's watched and contributed to the show tonight, keep up to date with all the goings on at your favourite club. Joe's put out a preview for tomorrow night's game. It's going to be a busy week, Boro fans, so keep your eyes peeled on Boro Fan TV. From all of us here, and me, James Hutchinson, good night and up the Boro.
Up the Boro.